strategic metals, and Doug Eaton is joining us, and somebody I have a lot of respect for. I met a lot of times in the past, and always excited to hear. It is my echo. I apologize for that. And always excited to hear what he has to say. So, and Doug, please join us, and you can.
Okay, very happy to be with everyone today. I'm talking from North Vancouver, so it's very early in the morning for me. I think it's midday for you guys. We're going to be introducing strategic metals. We're an exploration company. Traditionally, we focused on project generation, but we've morphed a bit now. We have a flagship project, and we'd like to talk to you about some of our investments in other projects if we can as well. So, Richard, do you want to move us through the slides? Very quick forward-looking statements. We won't spend any time there. So there's 5 things we've identified, or 5 aspects of the company we've identified at this time, which we think could be real drivers for the company in the next year. The first is, unlike normal times, we actually have a flagship exploration program we've been working on this year called Mount Hinton. It's located in the Keno Hill district in central Yukon, right alongside Alexco's very famous silver mines. So the work in there was following up some very successful exploration that we did last year. Surface samples ran spectacularly, to be quite blunt. One of the samples was 2,340 grams gold. Other samples nearby ran 200 grams gold with over 2,000 ounces of silver. So based on those very encouraging results, we moved into an aggressive 7,000 meter drill program, which is completed now. Got lots of assays pending. In fact, we've received almost none of them to date. Areas, the mineralization is enormous. It's 6 kilometers by 4.5 kilometers. It's still open to extension. We've just tested 3 areas within that very large area. So we'll talk more about that in a moment. So let's move on to some of the other drivers. Those are investments we made in other companies. One is Ggl Resources. They, again, are located in Yukon, a little south of us. They've got a standalone camp scale silver gold or gold silver project. They did a PEA earlier this year that was very robust at $1,740 an ounce. It's got a $540 million MPV and an IRR of 49%, but it's robust right down in below to $1,200 gold. So very, very enthusiastic about that project. Lots of room for expansion. They're in the midst of a drill program right now. The purpose of that program is to identify new areas of mineralization, especially if they're higher grade than their average deposit. They want to know about that before they launch into their pre-feasibility infill drill program. That'll be done next season. 3 other companies that I think are also very important. One is a private company, Terrace CO2. We own a little over 50% of that company. It's working on a relatively low CO2 generating alternative to Portland cement. The key thing there is they're not using limestone as a base. So the limestone that's generated during the heating process for normal cement is eliminated. And it could have enormous implications environmentally. And what's even more important is that we can show that it's cost competitive with regular cement. So very bullish on that. They're moving ahead aggressively. Ggl Resources, another company that we have a large share interest in, about 46% at present. They've got lots of interesting projects, but the one we're really focused on is a newly acquired gold project in the Walker Lane trend of Western Nevada. It's a former producer, and they're going to be drilling later this year. And then finally, Precipitate. Precipitate is a company we own a little under 20% of. They're working in the Dominican Republic. And right alongside Pueblo Viejo, they've done a very good deal with Barrick, where Barrick can earn 70% of one of their projects, but they've got another nearby property that they own 100%. And both Barrick and Precipitate are expected to drill this year. So lots of news expected from the drill bit. And that's all on top of our core business, which is project generation. And we have 120 projects, mostly in Yukon, but some in BC. We're building basically on the expertise that we built in over 20 years of running strategic and 50 years as a consulting company and mining those databases to recognize really promising targets. And it's been successful. We found the 2 highest grade gold deposits in Yukon that have more than 1 million ounces in them. So our team is a strong team. A little bit on the structure of the company. We've got a little over 106 million shares outstanding at present. On a fully diluted basis, that goes up to about 128 million shares. If all those shares were exercised, it would generate about another $6 million in cash for us. Our current cash position is about $10 million. We expect to have approximately 8 million after paying for all of our work at the end of the year. And what's really important is the value of our shareholdings in other companies. And that's about $30 million. Obviously, it fluctuates as the market goes up and down. Company's been very stable. It's got great shareholders. Our 3 largest shareholders are Ggl Resource Partners, Sprott Gold Equity, and Ruffer. So we're very, very happy with the structure of the company. We have no debt. So we'll move on there. So why are we focused where we are? Yukon sits right in the center of the Northern Caledonian Gold Province. It's a very prolific belt that's becoming more important over time. It contains about 10% of the world's gold resources, but it represents less than 1% of the world's surface area. So it's very well endowed in gold. Lots of well-known names in the belt, but one of the things that really makes it appealing to us is that there's lots of majors. Newmont, Barrick, Newcrest, and others have made big investments in the last few years within that belt. Some of our showings, which are predominantly gold showings, are shown with the blue stars, and you can see that they're mixed in among a number of other important projects. One of the reasons that we focused on Yukon is that the Yukon portion of that belt is underexplored compared to the Alaskan and BC portions of the belt. And that's why so many discoveries have been made in the last 10 years. Talking about the flagship project at Mount Hinton, so we mentioned that it was in the Keno Hill district. That's the 2nd largest silver producer in Canada, about 200 million ounces produced in the last century from a number of mines on what's now ground that's owned by Alexco. So that's on the slide on the left-hand side. Those are the claims shown in purple. Just to the northwest of that, in a sort of tan color, is the ground of Victoria Gold. They've recently commissioned their Ggl mine there. It's going to produce, or expected to produce, over 200,000 ounces of gold this year. A big sheeted vein system that they're mining as an open pit with heap leaching. The silver veins at Keno Hill tend to be narrower structures, but very, very high grade. The average production grade there is over 1,300 ounces of silver per ton, or grams of silver per ton. So very, very high grade. Our ground is shown as red. As you can see, it's just a little southeast of the Keno Hill ground. It's road accessible, obviously very close to their mill, good access to power. We think that the infrastructure there is very promising. We're part of the same hydrothermal system as Keno Hill, except we think that we're probably a little bit closer to the center of the heat source. So we're seeing slightly different mineralogy and different metals present, or relevant metal abundances. Keno's is a little further out there in the more distal part. They see more lead and zinc and silver. We're closer to the center, so we see more gold, but we do see some overprinting of silver, lead, and gold. Silver and lead as well. The discovery was made up on the hillside, shown on the right. You can see a star there with the 2,340 grams pointing to it. There's very little outcrop on that slope. Huge quartzite boulders. We're in the same stratigraphy as host the Keno Hill deposits, a mixture of quartzites with interbedded phyllites and some gabbro sills. So we started last year building a road system up that hillside, and Appreciate will split the slides there. So you can see that we're within that very large geochem anomaly. There's veins that are shown faintly there with stars and red black lines. Those are some of the known veins. They're prior to us arriving, there were about 70 veins that were known. Most had silver as a major component, and they were found by prospectors looking for Keno Hill style mineralization. But one of the things that characterizes this property when we started working on it, we realized there was lots of quartz veins that were unbroken, didn't have much mineralization, certainly not much of the galena, which is so important at Keno Hill. And as we started to sample them, we found that there was a lot of gold in veins that looked very unpromising, quite frankly. And we think that's why the old timers overlooked this area. Our interest was really piqued when placer miners working downstream of us found really spectacular nuggets. And what was interesting there is it was a new discovery under about 10 meters of glacial till, which makes it almost unique in Yukon. In most places where there's glacial material, the placer deposits are destroyed. So as we followed back up and did our soil sampling, we outlined a very large, very strong anomaly, up to 3 grams gold in soil. As I said, the follow-up work has discovered lots and lots of veins. And so we focused on 3 areas this year. The one is the Granite North Zone, which is in the upper part of the slide where there's a red star, and which represents some chip samples that were taken earlier this year. Second zone was just to the north of that, called the Northern Structural Corridor. That's where most of the traditional veins were found. They're more lead and zinc and silver rich than our classic gold veins, which lie farther south. And finally, the southwest zone, down in the south central part of the slide, that was an area that had received almost no historic work and is turning out very promising for us. So we'll zoom in a little bit on those now. So in the Granite North Zone, there was no natural outcrops within the area that we drilled. As we built our system of trails, they doubled up as trenches, and we exposed a whole series of bands of alteration with breccia and quartz veining. And with our objective here was to test 3 models. One was bulk tonnage. In other words, did we have a sheeted vein system like they have at the Ggl deposit? The second idea was to look for really consistent through-going vein systems that might grade, tens of grams, but weren't spectacular splashy grades. And then the third would be to look for pockets of really high-grade mineralization. So we're doing a very, very extensive, very thorough sampling program, which has slowed down the analyses fairly significantly, but we're going to have very high confidence in our results when we're finished with them. So as you can see, we drilled a series of section lines across those structures. In the southwest zone, we had a much different situation. It's a very well-defined, very strong structure that we followed for about 1,700 meters. It's still open at both ends. The structure ranges from a few meters wide to over 40 meters wide. And we put 5 drill holes into that one this year. One of the holes that we drilled passed very close to, in fact, about 100 meters below a chip sample that was taken earlier this year that graded 200 grams gold per ton with across 1.2 meters. So we wanted to see what the heck was happening down dip of that. So we're looking forward to getting our assay results. We expect over the next couple of months we'll have a flood of results coming in, and we'll be getting them out. So once again, just to review, what are the catalysts for this year? First of all, we got Mount Hinton. We own it 100%. We just got to see what kind of assays we get. We're well funded to go forward if we like what we see, and we'll move into another aggressive drill program next summer. Rockhaven, they're in the midst of a drill program. We expect them to do infill drilling next year and proceed into a pre-feasibility situation. That's the only one of our projects that isn't at the front end of the Lasange curve. But fortunately, it's I think over the next couple of years is going to be coming into the second bump of the curve as they move toward production.